Hello everyone, we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn here, bringing you another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is the place where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game-changing strategies, and of course, the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Joseph Martens and I'm excited to introduce today's guest. With us today is Bill Kintz. Bill is the CEO of Cayo Loco Consulting, where they help organizations mitigate cyber risks. Before this role, Bill has been in tech executive positions both at the United States Coast Guard and in the private sector. Bill, it's awesome to have you with us today.
Joseph, thanks for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
You're here because you have an accomplished career as a leader in tech functions, and we would love to hear more about your lessons learned, about your insights from that journey. So let me start with a reflection on what drives your success. When you think back to the many successful moments you had in your career, what do you think are the key contributors to the success that you've had?
Oh, that's easy. It's the people I've been working with.
Okay.
Without that, and without surrounding yourself with high quality folks who trust you, you're not going to get as far. It's just that simple. Because it's a team sport, and as a leader, our job is to bring our people together to where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And you can't do that unless you trust them and they trust you.
Okay, so tell me more about getting this team of people together. Talk to me about what you pay attention to in hiring, other than subject matter expertise, other than their knowledge of the IT function. What do you pay attention to? What's important to assemble that team?
And to be honest, the technical aspects are probably the things I pay the least amount of attention to.
Okay.
Okay. Because it's easy to teach technology to folks. It's easy to teach technical concepts. It's not easy to teach somebody how to read a room when they're communicating. The soft skills, those are much more difficult to teach, especially when we're in an area that is so very fast-paced and is so focused on the technology aspects of it. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, most folks who are into technology are, the majority of, are introverts.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to know that that's the population that we're looking at. Those are the people that have the technical skills and the attention to detail that we need to get our mission across the finish line. But it's having those soft skills and being able to communicate that really serve as the force multiplier on a team, right? So yeah, I spend probably 60 to 70% of my interviews talking about perspective and communication and biases and creative thinking and how somebody would approach a particular problem. I'll read over the certs that somebody has. Certifications are very good litmus tests of what level of technical acumen somebody has. And I know that if there's something missing there, I can very easily get them up to speed.
Yeah.
But I am way more focused on this one.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of tips what to pay attention to? Is there any one particular telltale where you see that's an indicator this person is a definite yes or a definite no? Any particular insights there?
I typically ask some really just weird out of the blue questions. For example, how would you estimate how much the Empire State Building weighs?
How it weighs, okay.
Yeah, how much does it weigh?
Okay.
And so you're some folks that come back and say, well, I just Google it and find out.
Okay.
Okay. But there's others that are like, well, let's see, we figure out how many floors that it has, we figure out the density and the weight of the concrete and the steel on each floor, and then we multiply that up. And those are the folks that look at it from various different things. Or, I'd go down and I'd go get a set of the original blueprints and the drawings and look at the calculations that the structural engineers used. And that's that telltale creativity. Saying I'm going to Google it that's not a bad answer, right? Because you don't expect we're not going to know everything.
Right.
And going out to get it instead of just saying, well, I'm going to ask you what the answer is. That's not bad, but it doesn't tap into the creativity and the problem solving and the looking at things. And it throws people a curveball in an interview, right? People come to a technical interview, they're not going to expect that.
No.
So you can also gauge how somebody responds to that curveball. And just that alone tells you how they respond to getting a curveball on the job, because it's going to happen. It happens all the time.
Yep.
So I do a couple things like that to kind of gauge reaction. You can't prep that. You can't fake that. It's a true who you are.
Yeah, I love it. That catches everyone on the left foot. Nice. Yeah. Talk to me about some of the moments in your leadership journey that were an aha moment for you, where you had the sense, I've learned something, I've discovered something, I didn't expect that, and it's been with you since then.
Well, a lot of my experience comes from the 25 years that I spent in the Coast Guard. I retired this past July at the rank of captain from the Coast Guard Reserve. And so some of those keys and the advice and stuff that I've seen and I've received have been in the form of actions that people have done, not necessarily words that people have said to me.
Okay.
And one of the first ones that really sticks in my memory is at the Coast Guard Academy, all cadets sail on Coast Guard Cutter. It's a 300-foot, 3-masted tall ship, and everybody does sail training. And that cutter has a whole history to it that I could take an hour talking about itself. But when I went on that during my long cruise between my freshman and sophomore year, we sailed across to England. So we went to New London and down around and off the Outer Banks of North Carolina, up through the Azores and over to England. And with every port call we would do, because Eagle is an ambassador ship, and it has a ton of brass on it. Before we pulled into port, everybody got out the massive amounts of brasso, and we were scrubbing brass to get the seawater and stuff off the brass to make the brass. And I was basically doing my engineering rotation. I was down in the engine room. Nobody sees the engine.
Okay.
Right? But we got to polish the brass down there anyway.
Wow. Okay.
Brass, right? Well, we're getting ready for this port call, and I think we're pulling into DC to be the backdrop for the change of command for the commandant that particular year. And the CO, the commanding officer, who's an 06 senior captain, came down into the engineering space with us and was polishing brass in the engine.
Okay.
And that just blew me away.
Yeah.
Right? I never in a million years would have expected. And so that really instilled in me the concept of servant leader. Right?
Yep.
My teams don't work for me. I work for them. And I am there to enable their success. And throughout my career, I've been in situations where the leadership that I've been under took that approach, and I've been in places where they did not. And the difference from the deck plate, from the subordinates perspective, it's a night and day difference in how you view those who are leading, and how you trust them, and how you're willing to stretch your capabilities and stretch what you're doing because they have the faith in you that you can do it. And that is the biggest thing, and that's just so ingrained in my psyche. I can picture it anytime I think about it.
Yep.
And I was scared. I was just floored because I'm this little going into my sophomore year in college, and this senior captain and I spent the last 3 years, I was that senior captain, not on Eagle, but in the leadership positions I was in. And that was a real time of reflection to see, okay, and remembering, how did I feel when these senior officers with all these stripes on and all these medals and stuff come? How did I feel? And what did they do to either put me at ease or to heighten my anxiety about the situation?
Yep. That's an impactful story. And I assume you shared one side of the story, the CO being the servant leader. I imagine you've experienced the other side as well, where the more senior person was insisting on their rank, was showing their rank, was
absolutely. We had an instance where the executive officer, so kind of the second in charge of my unit, had just come from completing a tour as the CO of another unit. So he went from being the number one to being the number two.
Okay.
And he was the number one at a unit that had a significant number of junior personnel in it. The unit I was in consisted of all senior officers. All of us. And many of us were the same rank that he was, officially. He was just in a higher position. And he lectured us on how to write an email and and we're like,
okay,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he ended up getting passed over for promotion and basically being retired.
Yeah.
And you can't help but think that had something to do with it.
There's a reason for that, right? Yeah. Now, great stories. How do you apply something like this in a non-military setting, in a corporation? How can you be that servant leader? How can you show that exemplary leadership approach and be that hands-on leader that you described there?
You've got to be able to talk to the people that are under you. Now, in some cases, you may have such a large team that you may not be able to get a lot of one-on-one time with each person, but you have subordinate leadership underneath you, and you instill in them, this is how we need to lead. You need to be in touch with your people on a regular basis, and you kind of flow that down to make sure that everybody feels like there's somebody they can go to say, I need help with this. Whether it is, I don't have the training to do this, I don't have the equipment to do this on correctly, I need help because these other people, these customers are trying to really push me into a direction that is not, that's contrary to our quality standards. And we refer to that from a military perspective, we refer to that as providing top cover. Right? So whenever we do search and rescue, a helicopter goes out, there is always a fixed wing aircraft that is out there above them, providing radio relay, providing whatever support they need. So that top cover. And people have to see it in action to believe it. You can get up and you can tell them all day long, but until somebody takes and comes to you and says, I need help with this, and you get them that help, people are going, oh, this is for real.
It's a totally different experience.
It's a totally different experience. And then somebody else tries it. And before you know it, you have a tight-knit group of folks who are reaching out to each other for help, whether it's, I have too much to do in this time frame, can you help get this done so we meet our deadlines on everything? And they start truly collaborating together. And that's the force multiplier. That's where you get your productivity.
Awesome. Okay, we've talked about your past leadership journey. Now I'd love to take a look at today, Bill, and would like to hear, what are you working on at the moment? Not in terms of projects, not in terms of work, but in terms of your own growth, your own development. What's an area where you think, this is something I can pay attention to? This is something I want to work on. This is something where I can grow. What's something?
So my big focal area right now is trying to become multilingual.
Okay.
And I say that in terms of being able to talk tech to the tech folks, being able to talk business to the business folks,
okay,
and to talk finance to the finance folks.
Okay.
Because what I'm finding, I specialize in industrial control system security, which I found that not even IT and IT security really understands. And a lot of business folks don't really understand IT or IT security. Not to the point that it affects the business. So being able to translate between them, I spend a lot of time doing that. And it's education, it's mentoring of folks, it's helping to identify biases, and there's a lot of, we have done it this way forever, therefore that is the only way we know, that's the only way that works, and really helping to break down those communication barriers, because that's the biggest struggle. And especially when you're talking about securing critical infrastructure, right? Stakes are high. And the only way that we're going to get in front of and stay in front of the threats who are threatening our critical infrastructure is if everybody is working together on the same page with a common goal.
I like the way you phrased it. Becoming multilingual, right? Understanding the different languages, cultures, and everything else that's involved in these different functions. And it also goes in the direction of aligning tech with the needs of the business, right? Making sure we're not providing a technology solution that doesn't make sense for the business. You want that alignment.
Right. And, the folks in IT, we have to understand that, the business supporting us doesn't always equate to just writing us a big check to get more stuff.
Right.
It means supporting us as we migrate from one paradigm of thought to another that is inherently more secure. Going in, evolving into more of the zero trust kind of architecture, and assuming that, okay, everything is already compromised. How do we deal with it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you can't protect, defend, or respond to what you don't know is there. So, I've been in several cases where, the cybersecurity group has wanted, I need to get this automated incident response tool and, this other pen testing tool and this other stuff. And I'm like, where's your visibility into your environment? Well, we don't have it. Well, none of the other stuff's going to do you any good unless you have visibility in your environment. And getting that visibility is way easier on an IT network than it is on an OT network.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing that, and how do you get that foundation? It's like building Maslow's hierarchy of needs for securing.
That's a nice analogy.
For securing a business, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you really have to build that. Now let me take a look into your future. Right? We talked about the past, present. Now let's take a look into the future. If you have a crystal ball, no matter how foggy or murky it is, what do you think your future leadership style will be like? And I'm not talking about positions here. I'm not talking about companies. Again, I'm talking about leadership, right? If we had this conversation again in 3 years, what would you tell me was your lesson learned in leadership over those 3 years? Let's speculate. We don't know it, of course, but where might it be?
I would say that you could sum it all up with, I don't remember the exact quote, but there is a quote that talks about society being, you can measure the health of society by the old men who plant the trees, the shade of which they'll likely never see.
Okay.
Right? So you're doing the work of planting the seeds so that they can grow, even though you're not going to be there to benefit from their growth. So I see myself doing leadership by enablement and empowerment. So I'm thinking of publishing a book.
Okay.
Putting together classes that are specialized classes to teach, to fill in some of those gaps. I'm serving on various different steering committees for different things that are trying to get put together to make us better moving forward.
Yep.
The last little bit of my Coast Guard career, I managed to get 2 brand new units. One, the reserve unit within Coast Guard Cyber Command, and a reserve unit at U.S. Cyber Command, Coast Guard U.S. Cyber Command. And those are great examples because that unit up at Fort Meade that I helped create stood up this past October, and I retired in July. So I did not get to see any of that. But I know I put the foundation in place. I got the charter in place for the unit. I got it staffed correctly, and that now it's going to take off, and it's going to go and do things that I've never even imagined it would be able to do.
Yeah. That's so amazing to plan something like this, essentially for the next generation of leaders, right? For the next people, and having the confidence, the trust, the faith that something good will come of it. Nice.
Not everybody has had the good fortune of having the military career that I have.
Yeah.
I have stood to watch with some of the greatest leaders the modern Coast Guard has seen. Our current acting commandant, Admiral Kevin Lundy, I served with him under 3 different commands. So almost half of my career was spent, under his tutelage. Admiral Thad Allen, who was the hero of Katrina and the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. I've served with him, and I've gotten to talk with him, like on the phone, just personal chatting kind of thing, mentoring type things. And it's time to see, okay, how can I give that back to those who don't have that experience?
Yeah.
How can I share that wisdom? Because it's too precious to lose.
Yeah. There are amazing moments to be with people like that, and you can feel it, right? There is something special in those moments, and
absolutely.
Yeah. Let me ask you one last question, and then we wrap it up. And maybe thinking of these kind of encounters, what was something you learned from these giants? What was something that you picked up there? Something that was important to you? And don't hesitate to say that it's the action more than the words again. I really like that thought. But what stands out for you there?
In this case, it's actually the words.
Okay.
The words and then the action put into it. In both cases, with Admiral Lundy and Admiral Allen, the things that they imparted upon us is to lean forward with a bias toward action. So if we see there's action that needs to be taken and we're not entirely sure exactly what it is and we can't get clarification, go forward anyway, do something. Even if there's, even if it's not 100% correct, if you're taking action to move forward, that is way better than inaction. And so that is, I echo that in every team that, I have the privilege of leading to them, is to lean forward. That means don't wait, have initiative, and when in doubt, take action.
Yeah. I've never heard it phrased like this, and I really like it. A bias for action. I love it, because sometimes, especially sometimes I certainly have a bias for thinking a little bit longer than necessary, and that's not always helpful. Bill, thank you so much. This was, sorry.
And that's, we all tend to hesitate in a point of uncertainty, tend to hesitate.
Yeah.
But knowing that, okay, even if this isn't right, the boss has my back and will support me, and I know that I will be supported. I know I won't be hung out to dry. That's going to get over some of that up.
That's key for that. And you're absolutely right. That's the foundation on which this becomes possible. Yeah. Bill, thank you so much. I will remember the bias for action. I will also remember polishing brass in the engine room. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us today.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. It's been a pleasure.
To everyone else out there, thank you so much for being with us today. That's a wrap for today. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, and come back for our next episode of the Top Innovator Series. And until then, keep all your brain cells active.